And with that, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell the people who you are, why you're here.
That's going to be a hard one, and within a minute or so. But my name is Rodrigo Gotas. I'm a Peruvian Palestinian artist. I've been living in Oslo for the past 5 years, and I've been 3 years ago. I was receiving my diploma here as part of the Art and Public Space program at Kiel. So I'm a little bit familiar with this institution in a way.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for having me as well. My name is Victoria Durnak. I'm a fiction writer and an artist. I work with writing novels and making movies and other types of art projects. Last years have been focusing on surveillance in close relationships, intimate relationships.
Thank you for inviting me as well. My name is André Gali, and I currently work as head of communication for Oslo Biennale. In the past, I have worked with Kunstforum as a critic and editor, and with Norwegian Crafts, and also had some work at the Astro Fernie Museum. So I'm looking very much forward to discuss both public art and arts and crafts in this panel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's two rather widespread, or should I say, different aspects of the art field. But I was just asked to repeat the names of the artists due to some technical issues. So here we go again, maybe better luck this time. So the artists in the show are Alejandra Aguilar, Una Astea Maldonita, Freya Burgess, Colleen de Lausanne, Enrique Guadarrama Solis, Elisa Halvorsen Castillo, Nelly Johnson, Takumi Murasumi, Katri Pauno, Robin Strøm Nilsen, Ying Shu Chi, Ming Chuan Tran, Viviana Cardenas, Anna Brotas, Lexi Owen, and Karina Sletten. So that's all 16, and hopefully we will all see more of them in the future. Okay, so in many ways, graduation exhibitions differ from conventional exhibitions, I would say, if such a thing even exists anymore. Still, I guess we all do have some expectations when we visit an exhibition. But when it comes to graduations, there's not necessarily one common theme or a subject matter at the core. Few, if any, red threads, so to speak. The techniques and expressions are manifold. And let's not forget the many different approaches to the processes that each artist employ to sort of convey their concept and convey their ideas. So then how do we approach this multifaceted entity, if it can even be called an entity? And as an outsider, if it's a moderator, as a critic, a fellow artist, or even as a visitor, how do we approach these exhibition or types of exhibition? And moreover, how to approach an exhibition like this when it's not just diverse, but it's also spread across the premises of Kiel, where we're at now, in the corridors, behind the corner, outside in the yard you didn't even know existed until just now, in a black box, a kind of white cube, atop a flight of stairs, a context leaving you as a viewer very worried if you missed out on a work of art. For tonight's talk, and we're going to get back to this, I hope. For tonight's talk, I've tried to narrow it down to some aspects I believe to be both interesting and relevant to you guys doing the talking, and also to you guys listening and looking from beyond. Yeah. And hopefully we will, I'm not sure if we're going to make some sort of conclusions, but hopefully we will open up the space in a way, as we say. So I would like to begin by asking you, or sort of posing the question, against what parameters can a graduation show be discussed? Having said what I said about all the diverse expressions, and it's in this particular exhibition, it's 16 artists. They're all trying to find their own voice, so to speak, instead of, and of course they shouldn't really be, curated within this tiny, narrow box. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on this is, and also how you approach this exhibition in particular. Rodrigo, do you want to start? You're nodding.
I
Yeah.
tend to do that, I think. But yeah, sure, I can start. Yeah, I mean, being myself here, 3 years ago, having to negotiate like the different spaces around this huge exhibition, this huge institution, all the multiple spaces that are around. Like my first encounter with the exhibition was this, you go through the entrance, and in a way, my first thought was like, there's a heavy admin atmosphere, kind of like taking over the space. And so I think that has to do with a little bit of the nature of the architecture of this institution, in which I think at times it becomes a little bit sterile for artists to kind of be trying to actually tap into their creative processes and exchange creative energy with other fellow art students. So in a way, I think at parts of this vision, you can see how films become a little bit more well-rounded. But as you go through the spaces, you also find, or at least I found, this kind of like, there is a scale, there is a magnitude of the space that kind of like eats up a lot of the artworks. And that's something that, as an art student, you have to deal with. There's no way around at times, but I think that was kind of like my first thought about that.
Victoria, we're gonna do the round now.
Yeah, I guess working with an exhibition like this as an artist is an exercise in dealing with what you have. And for me as a viewer, I think the best possible outcome is to come to an exhibition like this and then feel like I am glimpsing in on a conversation, because these artists have also been working alongside each other for several years. And it can be like having a chance to look inside a personal relationship, and then you can also see, should these people really be living together, or are they arguing too much? But with that said, I enter a type of exhibition like this with the same questions like I enter every exhibition. And what does this art do, and what does it do to me?
Andre?
I think when you approach this, or to approach an exhibition like this as a curator or as an art critic, to kind of seek for some sort of consistency or meaning or anything would be impossible in a way. So it's kind of, you have to, in a way, try to see the artwork as themselves, but it's very different from all the spaces that we have seen today, because here we're sitting right now is quite a normal gallery, white cube, and it works quite well, the curation in here. But in other spaces, the works are struggling with, well, they're in dialogue with other spaces that's not so, how do you say, controlled or defined. So it's interesting, even though I did like some of the works in the other spaces as well, and particularly in those spaces, I think it's really, it's interesting to look at this exhibition and try to take some sort of, well, I don't know, some sort of, is there a theme, is there an attitude, is there something that binds these artists together? I think it's hard to say, even though some of the works obviously make some sort of reference to people have been contained, they have been staying at home, they have looking at subject matters that has to do with the intimate sphere, but not all of them, and not expressed similarly. Or so I'm not sure if it's just a pandemic or if some of these artists would have worked with the home in a way, or the close environment, even if it hadn't been a pandemic. So I don't know. It's hard to kind of say something very accurate about an exhibition like this.
Yeah. Before we jump to this whole pandemic issue, I mean, it's inevitable that we get there. You were saying it's next to impossible to sort of gather some sort of essence from an exhibition like this. And I guess it is impossible because the only thing these people have in common is actually graduating from this study. Still, though, I think it's human to search for some sort of links, to try and search for some sort of core, and you want to know why these are all put together. And also, with students working closely together throughout many years, and of course, being, subject to maybe not trends, but influences and such, I'm still curious to hear if either of you felt or sort of gathered some sort of notion of some kind of red thread. Are there anything recurrent in this show, or is it 16 different subject matters and 16 different topics? And yeah, can we see some sort of, is this, if you look into not the mirror, but this krystallkule, this crystal ball, can we sort of perceive the future from this exhibition? And the next gen artist.
I don't know about the future, but I found that there were several red threads walking around, and I would like to read one quote from that was in the catalog from Une Austea Maldonita, and sorry for everyone if I mispronounce your name, but I'll try my best. And she writes that in the process of making, I arrived to a place I have never been. I can't explain where it is, what it is, or how I got there. And this I find was quite reoccurring, both in my experience of the works and also in the artist's information. This working and dealing with fictional or imagined or alternate universes. I don't know about you, if you felt the same.
Yeah, partly I'll say. I agree with you in the fact that there are like multiple threads in a way, throughout the exhibition. But what it kind of like struck me the most is this kind of like insistence in the shape of the ritual. Like many of the artists have, there's like an exercise in which they kind of like put themselves into this kind of like self-reflection mode, this kind of like I think Lexi Owen, with her work, she mentioned about, the act of care is not really an indulgence. It's more about the, self-preservation. And in a way, it kind of like relates. I know we're going to talk about COVID, the pandemic afterwards, but it kind of relates with this momentum that we're having right now, in which you might find yourself isolated, you might find yourself quarantined or locked down, and just have you and yourself to kind of like talk to. And I think some of the works have tapped into that kind of like individual energy that at the same time sort of like contains at times a kind of spirit, a kind of willingness to move forward in the form of repetition and ritual, and perhaps as a way of catharsis, as a way of coping with this time, I guess.
It's interesting what you say with like in a crisis like this, what do you have? You have yourself, and that's it. But then you also have a kind of luxury when you're an artist, because you also have your work, and that is very visible that they are working very serialized. A lot of the artists with so you have yourself, and you can still do the work, maybe.
I've talked to people and artists throughout this whole period of, and of course I do understand it's been challenging, but I've also talked to people and colleagues who have said that, finally I have some time to breathe, it's time to work, you don't have to worry about, do I miss out on this opening and this exhibition? You can sort of be in yourself, but of course that's also, everything in moderate sizes, it's always better to have a little bit of both. But I'm not so sure if I actually saw or could see any of this in the works as such. I'm not sure if I've seen this exhibition and I didn't know, hypothetically, that it had been a pandemic, and I hadn't known that they were on their own. I'm not so sure if it's perceivable, at least to me, but maybe you're smiling, Andre. Do you have a different opinion?
Not necessarily, but I was just thinking that some of the works in the exhibition